Hello, my dear friends. How are you doing? Hope you are having an amazing day and not having to deal with drama. Ready for new stories I have for you today? Let's go to the first one. And don't forget to listen to the end of the story, guys, to hear my insights. Enjoy the stories, and don't forget to like and subscribe. And of course, don't forget to leave a comment. Hey Reddit, this is a pretty long and complicated story, so buckle up. I'm 24 male, in a situation that's been tearing me apart, and I really need to know if I'm the a-hole here. My dad, my stepmom, and my stepsister have all turned against me, and I'm at a complete loss. Let me start with a bit of backstory. My mom passed away when I was 10 years old, and it was just my dad and me for a few years. We were close. He was my hero back then, and I thought we'd always be a team. But that changed when he met my stepmom, Carla, 48 female. Carla had a daughter from a previous marriage, Sophie, 26 female, and they moved in with us not long after my dad and Carla got married. Things changed almost immediately. Carla was strict, cold, and had a nasty habit of pitting Sophie and me against each other. She favored Sophie in everything: clothes, gifts, attention, you name it. Sophie was the golden child, while I became an afterthought. My dad, who used to be so loving and supportive, started taking Carla's side on everything. I felt like I'd lost both my parents overnight. Carla insisted on treating Sophie and me the same, which sounds fair on the surface. But what it really meant was treating me worse to make sure Sophie always felt like the star. She'd make me do chores while Sophie got to go out with friends. Or she'd buy Sophie brand new clothes and tell me I had to make do with hand-me-downs. My dad, who used to have a spine, suddenly seemed incapable of saying no to anything Carla wanted. When I was 18, my maternal grandparents passed away. They left their house to me in their will. It's not a mansion, but it's a nice modest home in a quiet neighborhood. Just perfect for someone my age starting out in life. I was incredibly grateful, and it felt like a final gift from them, knowing I'd have a secure place to live and build my future. For a while, things were good. I went to college and stayed at the house. It became my sanctuary, a place where I didn't have to deal with Carla's constant criticism or Sophie's whining. I could finally breathe. I finished my degree last year and landed a decent job. I was settling into a routine and starting to feel like I was getting my life on track. But then, a few months ago, my stepsister Sophie announced she was pregnant. She's been dating this guy, Mike, 27 male, who, to put it kindly, doesn't seem to have his life together. He's unemployed, and Sophie's been supporting him with money she doesn't have. They're living with Carla and my dad, who are less than thrilled about the arrangement, especially since Mike seems to be in no hurry to find a job or contribute financially. About a month ago, my dad and Carla came over to my house unexpectedly. They sat me down and said they wanted to talk about family matters. I was immediately on edge, because that usually means they want something. My dad, who looked uncomfortable the whole time, let Carla do most of the talking. She started with a long speech about how families need to support each other and how Sophie was in a delicate condition and needed a stable place to live now that she was expecting. I listened, not sure where this was going, until Carla finally dropped the bomb. They wanted me to move out of my house so Sophie and Mike could move in. I was stunned. This was my house, the one my grandparents left to me. Carla kept talking, saying how it was only fair since Sophie was going to be raising a child and needed the space, and I was just one person who could easily find an apartment or even move back in with them. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I told them flat out that I wasn't going to give up my house, that it was mine, and I had no obligation to give it up for Sophie. Carla's face turned red, and she started yelling about how selfish I was being, how I was letting my stepsister and her baby be homeless, and that I was tearing the family apart. After I refused to give up my house, things got even worse. My dad, who had been silent during most of Carla's rant, tried to reason with me. He said it was only temporary, just until Sophie and Mike could get on their feet. I asked how long that would be, and he couldn't give me a straight answer. I told him that Sophie and Mike needed to figure out their own lives, and that it wasn't my responsibility to house them. Carla lost it. She screamed at me, saying I was a horrible person and that my grandparents would be ashamed of me for being so selfish. That stung, but I held my ground. I told them I wasn't going to discuss it any further and asked them to leave. After they left, I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. A week later, I came home from work to find Carla, Sophie, and Mike at my house. They had a moving truck outside and were unloading boxes. I was in disbelief. I asked them what the hell they were doing, and Carla, with a smug look on her face, said they were moving Sophie in like we discussed. I was furious. I told them to get their stuff and get out. Sophie started crying, saying she had nowhere else to go, and Mike just stood there looking awkward. Carla told me that if I didn't let them stay, I'd be kicking a pregnant woman out on the street, and that I'd regret it. I told her that if they didn't leave, I'd call the police. My dad wasn't there, and I realized he must have known this was happening and decided to stay away to avoid the confrontation. I went inside, locked the door, and called the police. Carla started banging on the door, screaming at me. When the police arrived, I explained the situation. They told Carla and the others that they had to leave since I was the legal owner of the house. Carla tried to argue, saying it was a family matter, but the police weren't having it. They escorted them off the property, and I finally felt like I could breathe again. Since then, my dad and Carla have been relentless. They've been calling and texting nonstop, trying to guilt trip me into letting Sophie move in. They've called me selfish, heartless, and every name in the book. My dad even left a voicemail saying he was disappointed in the man I'd become, and that I was destroying our family. Carla has also spread lies to other family members, saying that I'm a spoiled brat who's refusing to help out my pregnant stepsister in her time of need. I've had aunts, uncles, and even cousins calling me, saying I need to do the right thing and help out my family. It feels like I'm being ganged up on from all sides. A few nights ago, my dad showed up at my house alone. He looked tired. He pleaded with me, saying he didn't know what else to do. He said Carla was putting immense pressure on him, and he was caught in the middle. He asked me again if I could find it in my heart to let Sophie and Mike stay, just for a few months. He even promised they would pay rent, which I highly doubt they could afford. For a moment, I felt a pang of guilt. This was my dad, after all. But then I remembered all the years of neglect, all the times he chose Carla and Sophie over me, all the times he stood by while I was mistreated in my own home. I told him that I wasn't going to give up my house and that it was time for Sophie to take responsibility for her own choices. My dad left, looking defeated. I thought things would calm down after that, but I was wrong. A few days later, I came home to find my kitchen window smashed. I immediately called the police again, and they took a report. I suspect it was Carla who did this. I've now installed security cameras around the house and considering filing for a restraining order against Carla, Sophie, and even my dad if things don't calm down soon. So, Reddit. Am I the a-hole for refusing to leave my own house after my neglectful dad and evil stepmom tried to give it to my spoiled pregnant stepsister? Well, OP's family is delusional, thinking that OP should give up his house for his stepsister. They're trying to manipulate OP into giving up something that is rightfully his. They have no regard for OP's well-being or his boundaries. OP is absolutely right to protect himself and his home. OP should not let anyone guilt him into thinking otherwise. OP is not responsible for fixing their poor choices. And now let's hear the community's opinion. Your dad and stepmom have been treating you like a second-class citizen in your own family for years. They have no right to your house, and you're not obligated to let them or your stepsister steamroll you. Stand your ground. As someone who's dealt with toxic family dynamics, I feel your pain, OP. You're not the a-hole. You have every right to live in peace in the home your grandparents left you. Don't let them guilt you into thinking otherwise. You've done more than enough to accommodate your dad, stepmom, and stepsister over the years. They've crossed a line, and you're right to set boundaries. Protect yourself and your home. You deserve better than this. My husband's 28 male, sister, 22 female, got pregnant with her boyfriend. They had a child, let's call her Pam, 23 months. My mother-in-law is very controlling and doesn't like my sister-in-law's boyfriend because he wasn't as well off as she likes him to be. She forced them to break up. Boyfriend is actually a stand-up guy and takes full responsibility of Pam. And mother-in-law cut him off completely. Now they see sister-in-law as a tragic single mom and everyone loves Pam. I used to love Pam too. When she was newborn, I was pregnant at the time. I took care of her 24/7. I bathed her, fed her, etc. Because while everyone loves to play with her, no one wanted to actually take care of her needs. I took care of her until I finally had my baby, Olivia, 13 months. My mother-in-law has been playing favorites, and it's obvious. She keeps on saying Pam is a natural beauty, while Olivia is only cute because she has hair. It was for a while frustrating, but I got over it and learned to ignore. All this constant spoiling has made Pam a very challenging baby. Pam has tantrums all the time. She hits, kicks, sits on Olivia all the time, and no one intervenes. They laughed and think it's normal baby behavior. It comes to a point where my child screams whenever she hears even the slightest sound of Pam. All I can do is to protect Olivia the best I can and intervene Pam from hitting her. But now I can't take it any longer, cause my only support system, my husband, clearly loves Pam more than his own child. He keeps buying her gifts every time he gets home from work. He never does this with Olivia. He keeps on shouting randomly, "Where's Pam? I miss Pam. She is so cute. She is so pretty. She is the best." He never called Olivia pretty or cute. It makes me so insecure. He can play with Pam, we are neighbors, for 2 hours with undivided attention, while he never plays with Olivia when he gets off work. He just looks at her, says hello, and plays on his laptop until midnight. You have to understand the situation. I'm not jealous of the love he has for his niece. It's his behavior towards his own daughter that I'm scared of. Whenever Olivia tries to do something, he just says Pam can do it better. When Olivia called him Papa, he just shrugged, while I remember he cried when Pam called him Poppy for the first time. I exploded this morning finally because of all the feelings that I've been bottling up. The night before, I sent husband a picture of Olivia, smiling with her 2 teeth. There's a gap between. He said this, and I quote, "Oh, wow, we have to save up for braces." I told him no, it's normal. And then he says, Pam's teeth are very neat. We weren't talking about Pam. Before he slept, he chanted, "Pam, Pam, Pam," randomly out of the blue. The next morning, he made up a song. Olivia has tooth gap. There's a huge gap. La 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 la. So this morning while I was feeding Olivia, who has been on eating strike for a couple days, he said, "What do you think? It's easier feeding Pam, right? Pam is so smart. Find me a video of Pam eating. I want to see." I was stressed and screamed at him to shut the F up. I don't want to hear about Pam anymore. He just walked off. I can't do this anymore. I feel bad for my daughter, cause she didn't do anything wrong. I just want him to love her like he loves Pam, to give her attention. We tried deep talk a couple of months ago, and he changed for a week. Then he went back to his fangirling habit. The worst part is that I'm scared he thinks I'm psycho because I'm jealous of his love for his niece. I don't know how to get through to him. Should I just ignore this? What will happen to my daughter's emotional well-being? Edit. I have to clarify a few things. 1. I love my daughter. 2. Pam is definitely not his child because she is definitely from a different ethnicity. And Olivia is definitely his child because they look so much alike. 3. Yes, they come from an Asian subculture that prefers maternal bloodline. 4. Reason why I have hope. My friend's mother-in-law is a narcissist, and it took a while, but with effort, her husband now sees the toxic family dynamic in his family. Now they are stronger and can set boundaries. So I know that we can do it too. We just have to go past the denial phase of my husband. 5. Yes, I understand terrible 2 is real, and tantrums can happen. It's just whenever Pam hits Olivia. They all laugh, and they don't say stuff like, "Hitting is bad, don't hit." They encourage her, saying that she is a strong girl for hitting people. Now it has become a habit. Whenever Pam sees Olivia, she thinks hitting is playing. 6. Yes, we used to live with my husband's family. We moved out 2 months ago. Still too close for my mother-in-law to drop unannounced. A story for another day. I was looking for ways to make him see, hey, what you're doing is not okay. So I can convince him to go to therapy together and alone. But I understand that the bridge for self-awareness is really hard to cross. That's what I'm trying to do. With every respect, I think your husband is not in his right mind. Document the words and actions towards your daughter, either by phone or just writing it down. After some time, you either confront the behavior or use the documents as security when you leave. Take care of your kid first. Let the rest sort itself out. You need to sit him down and have a very serious conversation about why he is ignoring his daughter. Don't mention Pam. Keep the focus of the conversation on Olivia. Tell him this is not acceptable, and his focus needs to be on his own daughter from now on. He has obviously never bonded with her like a good father should. If he admits he has no love for her, then you know what you need to do. Get away as far as possible. A bit of background info. I'm a recent immigrant to the United States. My husband and I have been fighting to get me over here on a visa for the past 2 years. Virus happened and screwed things up. We ended up suing the government. Long story short, I had to quarantine in Mexico for 2 weeks before I got here as Europeans were banned from flying straight to the USA. We literally fought tooth and nail for this marriage to happen. This time last year, while I was in my home country, my husband had a stint in rehab. Mother-in-law promised she would look after him when he got discharged. What actually happened was this. Her husband, father-in-law, cheated on her with the next-door neighbor 2 days after my husband was released from rehab. This resulted in absolute chaos, and everyone felt sorry for her. I would spend hours on the phone with her trying to calm her down after she would threaten my husband that she would K herself. All of this caused a ton of emotional stress on both my husband and I, as he was recently sober, and I was a frontline worker during pandemic. Plus, we did not know when we would see each other again. Nonetheless, I would always send her cards, buy her small presents, call her. She would always say she was the victim of domestic violence, and she probably was, but we were both conscious of making her feel better and helping her get through this rough patch. Fast forward to 2 days before my wedding. My sister-in-law and I were getting our nails done, and she revealed another side to my mother-in-law. Quick info about my sister-in-law. My mother-in-law always would complain about her, make her out to be selfish, accuse her of preventing her from seeing her grandson, etc. Mother-in-law always told my husband and I to be careful of her. I won't go into all the details, but what sister-in-law told me about mother-in-law, if true, made her out to be bat crap crazy, and caused a lot of emotional trauma on my husband and brother-in-law. They currently have anxiety, depression, and low self-esteem issues. Sister-in-law also revealed she would complain about me regularly too, which hurt as I was always there for her. I invited my mother-in-law over on my wedding night. My family is banned from entering the USA due to pandemic currently, so I wanted her there to help me get ready and walk me down the aisle. She refused to go to the wedding rehearsal. The whole night she was freaking out over my father-in-law and his mistress, next-door neighbor lady, watching her on the wedding live stream that was set up for my family back home to watch. I kept telling her that the camera was only pointing at me and dear husband. The day of the wedding, she asked me to make her coffee while she complained about her ex-husband again. I found it exasperating as this was supposed to be a happy day. After we got our hair and makeup done, I paid $500 for her. It was my treat to her. She kept asking me to take pictures of her. I had to get ready, so I politely excused myself after a few photos taken to put my dress, jewelry on. I asked her to help me with the buttons on my dress, and she kept complaining that she was tired. I was ready 2 hours before the ceremony, but she kept disappearing upstairs to drink and was on her phone constantly, doing nothing until the last second. She kept trashing the house where we would have our party after the ceremony, and I kept trying to clean it up after her in my dress. When it came time to leave, she kept delaying me by saying she needs more makeup on or needs to get something. I was on the verge of tears. We had 15 minutes to go until the ceremony started. Finally, we got in the car, and she lights up a cigarette. I smelled like smoke, and pulls over because it's so stressful, I need a minute. I had a panic attack and told her that I promised dear husband I'd be there on time. I was there just on time. But when we got in the venue, she started moisturizing her legs in the bathroom. My sister-in-law was there with me at this point. I told mother-in-law we needed to go, as she was walking me in. When it was time for me to walk down the aisle, she unlinked my arm and went to run over to my dear husband. I yanked her back. Throughout the whole ceremony, she was crying profusely, almost like it was a funeral. It was weird. She was in one photo and refused to take part, join us for more photos. Apparently, she kept smoking and complaining about father-in-law again to some of our guests, and went back to our house early. At the party, she never helped with setting up the food, and went to lie down in bed when guests arrived. She ghosted our guests when she came back down, announced she was leaving, and told me to get her stuff, that she left lying around trashing the place, and put it in the bag for her. The room upstairs was a disaster. She smoked and there was a smell of cigarettes up there. Sister-in-law seen this and said this is how she treats her too. She pretty much made the most important day of my life the most stressful day of my life. Weirdly enough, she hid this behavior well. I'm extremely anxious of the future, as she has my husband always feeling sorry for her. I confided in my husband the day after my wedding, and while he did admit that mother-in-law is acting strange and out of order, he also said that sister-in-law is not to be trusted and is influencing my view on her somewhat. I don't know what to do at this point. Piece of advice with B women. Currently, they are complaining about each other, but you're the outsider here, so they will be complaining about you. And once they make up, if you said anything about either of them, they will tell each other and gang up on you. Neither of these women can be trusted. Don't let your guard down. Protect yourself. Dear husband, your sister didn't make mother-in-law trash the house. She didn't force mother-in-law to smoke like a chimney, or do any of the laundry list of bad behaviors she did on our wedding. Your mother chose to do all that, on our day, and every time we've needed her. So right now, I need you to stop prioritizing being a son, and start acting like a husband. What that means is reading books, working with a professional counselor, and looking at your mother objectively without the benefit of rose-colored glasses. Can you do this?